Hi everybody, I'm George Genthner, an Orchid Horticultural Curator here at the Atlanta Botanical Garden. I'm here today to give you some tips on how to keep your orchids healthy and happy at home. The three most important things to keep in mind for your home orchid are the right kind of lighting, the right kind of watering techniques, and the right kind of container and mix for growing your orchid. First and foremost, one of the most important things to consider with home orchid care is proper watering techniques. Most orchids come from environments where they receive a quick, rapid soak from something like rainfall, and then the opportunity to air out and nearly dry before their next watering. It's important when growing your home orchid, like this tropical lady slipper, a Paphiopedilum, to have a container that allows for proper drainage whenever you water. The idea is to let the plant have water run through and drip out the bottom, finish dripping, and then put the plant back where it came from with a chance to nearly dry before you water it again. In mixes like this bark mix, you can test that by digging down into the mix and seeing if the bark remains damp. You can also take something like this plastic tag, stick it into the pot, pull it back out, and if it seems damp or tacky to the touch, it means you have a little bit more time before you need to water. In other mixes, like in this New Zealand sphagnum moss, you want to allow the moss to become just lightly tacky before you water again. Never crispy bone dry and never sopping wet for an extended period of time. Some popular techniques, like the ice cube method, are not effective long term, especially for larger plants. Ice cubes do not actually provide enough water for the plant to stay healthy and happy. Additionally, if the ice cubes contact root systems or lower parts of the plants, they can actually cause direct physical damage or disruption to the plant. Another important consideration for growing healthy home orchids is the amount of light that your plants are receiving. Different kinds of orchids like different amounts of light in a home setting, but generally speaking, south and east facing windows are best for growing a wide variety of orchids. An important final consideration when you bring your orchids home is what sort of potting mix you're going to use in the long run to keep your plants healthy and happy. Typically, when you buy them at the store, they're going to come home in either a moss-based mix or a peat moss mix. The only thing is, once they're done flowering, you're going to want to consider repotting them, as many of these mixes start to break down by the time you receive the plant. You typically have two main options to work with. You have a New Zealand sphagnum moss, and you have a composite bark mix that contains things like bark chips, charcoal, and some sort of drainage like perlite or grow stone. For someone who doesn't like to water quite as often and has trouble holding consistency with watering, something like New Zealand sphagnum moss works well. It holds moisture for longer, it dries evenly, and it's more predictable. It can also encourage root growth on plants that need a little bit of babying and rehabilitation. The only challenge is that New Zealand sphagnum moss, because it holds moisture, breaks down faster, and you'll typically find yourself repotting in this mix about once a year. Bark mix, like the one I have here, lasts longer. It can go up to 2 to 3 years. It drains well, but it dries less evenly, and it can be a little bit more unpredictable when you're deciding how often to water your plant. Certain orchids do have certain preferences for mixes. I tend to find that lady slipper orchids like more of a bark-based mix. Phalaenopsis will grow well in either bark or in moss, depending on your home conditions. When you get to a larger container size, it's always better to use bark. Large containers of moss tend to stagnate over time.